Hi, this is Robert Ginyard, and welcome to this episode of Intentionally Overheard. It's a podcast that features guests whose life journey has helped them answer three important questions about themselves. Who am I really? Why am I here? And what am I supposed to do with my life? For more than 30 years, Marc Clarke has been a voice people wake up to. It's often a voice heard throughout the day. It's a voice that entertains, informs, and sometimes even helps people through difficult moments in their lives. Many remember him from Baltimore's legendary Big Fat Morning Show. But Marc's story is about much more than radio. It's about resilience, reinvention, and discovering responsibility that comes from having a voice that people trust. Today we talk about the highs, the setbacks, and the deeper purpose behind a life spent in media. And now my conversation with Marc Clarke.
Joining us. Robert, thank you for allowing me to join. And you didn't tell me, Robert, you share a famous name.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Well, wait a minute. I got to tell you, that story with Robert Ginyard, I've had people actually call this house, Marc, and track me down, and they're thinking I'm the Rob Bass. And so many times they were so disappointed. But yes, Rob Bass and I share the same name. And get this, I was on an interview a couple of months ago, and the host said, Robert, now I've got to talk to you about your days back in the 80s and 90s. And I said, you had such a big hit with It Takes Two. I told him, I said, I'm not that guy, but a lot of people ask me if I am. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and the crazy part is you look like if Rob Bass got corporate a little and, because you kind of cleaned up, he cleaned up nicely. He turned corporate. He looks like he lives in the suburbs now. It looks
Yes.
like it's, but yeah, no, it's not. It's not you.
Success will do that to you.
Right.
And for you. Well, Marc, as always, I start the show off by asking my guest, how are you treating the world and how's the world treating you back?
I'm treating the world as I always have treated the world, with love and kindness. And the world is showing me, I guess that's what the world is showing me, what the world is. I think this age and living through what we're going through, the world is, I'm like, I feel like my eyes are opening on a lot of things from politics to religion,
Yes.
to humans and to love and family. So yeah, that's what's going on with that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And just so our listeners know, to give them a little bit of background, Marc and I actually physically met last year at an event. It was the Father's Day Wellness Walk. And, we had a chance to talk. And for many years, I'd listened to Marc on the radio and was even interviewed by Marc on a couple of morning shows when we talked about health issues, Black men's health issues, particularly prostate cancer. And again, Marc and I had an opportunity to talk. But then to see him last year, and we talked about so many things that dealt with life and, just so many things that it was such a pleasure to meet the Marc off air and really get to know you. And I mentioned to you then, I've got to have you on the show. And so that's a great segue, Marc. And by the way, to our listeners, because Marc has such a deep and long history in media, particularly radio, he sets up these questions so well. So I'm just going to flow with this. So after you answered that, it's, Marc, tell me about the real Marc Clarke.
Well, off the air you're talking about, and this happens a lot. So the real Marc Clarke actually is Lawrence Johnson, or Larry Johnson, as my childhood friends would call me. And that's always shocking. You were like, what? Who's this guy? Because when on my emails, sometimes my emails and my phone calls or whatever, people will be like, who is Lawrence Johnson? Is that your producer? You're like, no, it's me. But my wife calls me Marc. So it's almost like, it's interesting, Robert, because the reality is Lawrence Johnson, when it comes to me, it really only exists in the minds of people I owe money to. Cause you know what I mean? Like, and I think for a lot of people that might be weird. I mean, is it weird? It might be weird. I mean, Marc Clarke, which isn't my real name, is really the essence of who I am and how people remember who I am. So and then now at 59, it becomes real. But it's interesting, right? It's right. It's interesting. This is what you asked for. This is what I asked for. I wanted to be the radio guy. And so you look up and that's what you got. So it's interesting, right?
Well, how did that name come about? Was it the rhyming of Marc and Clarke? How did that come about?
Well, you know what? And I'm going to send it to you, Robert. I just did a Shortcuts, which is it's a storytelling organization. And it's called Shortcuts. And actually it's on YouTube. You can look it up. And it's called, the theme was Last Night a DJ Saved My Life. And ironically, when I worked in Charleston, I did save someone's life. And
yes, and I want to talk about that because that was powerful. But please proceed.
So the name came about. So this was probably my second. This is my third radio stop at the time. I think I started off in Huntsville. So I guess it was second. I started off as Huntsville as Jade Thomas. First of all, let's go back. I started in college as Larry Love. And you know, Larry. I don't know. You might remember that. It was like an intro for a New York song. So I used that. In college, that was my little hot intro. Larry. And so that was the only time there. And then I worked at a real station in college, a top 40 station, as Larry Johnson. I think that's the only time I ever was my real name on the radio. And then my first job in Huntsville, I was Jade Thomas, which, looking back, Jade Thomas is a terrible radio name.
Yeah, I'm here envisioning you coming up with these names, and Jade Thomas just seemed like they came from so far out of left field.
Well, you know what it was? There was a Jay Thomas. I remember as an actor. Jay Thomas was an actor, but he started off in radio. And so I was like, so then I just put the D on it. But thank God it was just a little AM station. So then when I went to Charleston, as I tell the story, so Charleston is Gullah, and that's Geechee. That's basically the Geechee people are, the original, basically a lot of the original African sounds and dialects are there. And so when I was in Charleston, on the story, I kind of added to it because actually, in reality, one of the people that I work with, or I would work with in the future, said, "Man, if I was coming here, I'd change my name to Marc Clarke because they're building the Marc Clarke Expressway, and it's everywhere. 526, the Marc Clarke Expressway." And so, that's the real story. And but ironically, in the storytelling, I've had to add some drama to it. So I said that this brother that worked at the station, who was a real person named Booty, said, "Man, if I been you, I changed my name to Marc Clarke." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Man, because they're building the Marc Clarke." So, and then this actually happened when I changed my name. I got the job and I was working one night and I get a call from a brother that's at the Citadel. And he's like, "Is this Marc Clarke?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I got a problem with your name." I'm like, "Why?" He said, Marc Clarke was a racist general who, when he was a president at the Citadel, said he would not admit any black cadets. And so thinking on my feet, I said, "Oh, no, brother, I'm not named after him. I'm named after Marc Clarke, the Black Panther, who was killed with Brother Fred Hampton." I just made that up. So that's how Marc Clarke was born. And so Marc Clarke is a racist general at the Citadel. So
wait a minute. So you didn't receive any more calls from this guy, right?
No, but I always tell the story, which is always so crazy. This guy, so this is the radio. This is in the 90s on the radio. He called. We had a long conversation, right? Years later, I'm somewhere. I forgot. It wasn't in Charleston. And this brother tapped me on my shoulder. I turned around. He had dreadlocks. He said, "You know who I am?" And Robert, it was weird. I was like, "You're the brother that called me that time and said Marc Clarke." Now, how did I even, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And this was before 9/11. He says, "Hey, man, I work for the government. And let me just say this. Something big's going to happen. Be careful." So it was kind of interesting moment, right? It was interesting. Like, again, how did I know that was
I was just going to say, you knew he was the guy.
It was weird. Do you know who I am? I don't know why that just popped in my head, but it really did. It really happened that way.
Yeah. Marc, take me back to the time when you realized radio might be your thing. And I know you do quite a bit of amount of television, but radio just seems to be your forte.
Yeah.
Tell me when you realized that radio was the thing for you, Marc.
So you mentioned earlier about WKRP in Cincinnati and them finding a home. I think, to be honest, Robert, my blessing was right out the gate. So when I was a kid, I admired Tom Joyner, I admired Howard Cosell, I admired Bryant Gumbel. I think when I was just thinking as a kid, I wanted to do television first, but then radio happened because when I was in college, I majored in radio, television, broadcasting. I was the kid in high school. I was the kid in middle school who did the announcements. And then in
Yeah.
high school, I did the
Okay.
announcements. So if you knew Larry Johnson growing up and you said
Yeah.
Larry, they said, oh yeah, he always has been that guy. I was the guy, always did the announcements. And then in my senior year in high school, I went to vocational school for radio broadcasting because, the vocational kids a lot of times weren't going to college. They were going to go straight to their careers. But I had some extra hours. So I did the vocational thing. I thought it would be cool to do the broadcast. So I did that. And then I went to college and majored in radio, television, broadcasting. And so then when it was time to come out, and I did the TV in college and did the radio in college, I thought I would get a TV gig, but I had a tape, and they said, oh, you need more experience. I'm from Springfield, Illinois. I'm like, I need more experience. This little small town. And so radio, the job came first, and that was, so so I guess I could say, Robert, I think, to be honest, my life, what I tell people is, it's easy for me to believe in the power of attraction and of thinking it, because just think, I'm from a town that doesn't have a black radio station to this day. And we used to hook our cable up to the radio to hear St. Louis and East St. Louis. And so the dream starts there. So the concept, it starts as a dream. And then I always tell the story. When I graduated from high school, I wrote letters to the top 3 stations I wanted to work with. It was Chicago, WGCI, Magic 108 in St. Louis, and K104 in Dallas, Texas. Dear sir, my name is Larry. I just graduated. I would like to work at your radio station. Robert, I didn't know it didn't work that way. But 5 years after graduation, guess what? I worked at Magic 108 in St. Louis. So,
Really?
The dream, it starts as a dream, and my life has been that way. And I say the same thing with my wife. I dreamed her. And so when you had these experiences and they come true, I think it's easy for you to believe in the power of prayer, the power of consciousness and all those things. And I always tell the story. Now, for people who had it the other way, it's easy for them to not believe. You know what I mean? It's almost like, so anytime I'm in that state of things aren't going right or you're not where you want to be, I believe things are going to be better because they always have been better. Why would they not? Why would they not get better?
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about you. You talked about in school, you were that guy that made the announcements. Tell me about the family support when you were growing up. Did the family say, well, we got you covered. We know this is what you want to do, and they encouraged it. Tell me about that.
I think I was the only child, and I always say I wasn't spoiled with material things, but I was spoiled with attention. My mother was a probably typical overwhelmed single mother trying to make it happen in this world for her son. But I had my great aunt and great uncle who lived next door, had 2 aunts on, one down the block, the other one down the block. So I had this community of support that, I never believed I couldn't be anything. I always believed I could be something. Also, I think we don't talk about it a lot, but I think legacy is important. My grandfather was a printer in Springfield, Illinois, who had 5 kids, who he never worked for anybody. He had his own business. And even though my grandfather passed away when I was 3, I grew up in that household, and I was kind of like, I think there is something to that energy, the belief. It wasn't one of those things where, I was surrounded by these books, historical books. Education was important. Being a quality human being was important. And I saw that in my elders. And I think that shaped me, and I was in a town that, Springfield, the thing about Springfield is it is definitely middle America, small town America. It's only, I think, 12% African-American population. So I was always, when busing started, I was always one of the black kids that whatever. But the interesting thing about Springfield was when busing started, the wealthy did not take their kids out. So the kids from the other side of the tracks, like me, went to
Yeah.
the expensive, the wealthy neighborhoods, and then the other kids went to the poor neighborhoods. So in doing that, it made all the schools better. So in
Yes.
Springfield, all the school, if like a lot of cities, if you don't go to the right school, you don't have a chance. In Springfield, all the schools basically got you ready for college or got you ready for your job. And, it's a state capital. So there's this, a lot of people just graduate and go work for the state their whole life, which, is not a bad life. It's
stable,
right.
Yeah.
And so Springfield, and I think, Robert, I'm probably older than you, but I think our generation also, when we talk about race, I think we definitely benefited from the civil rights movement in that we kind of grew up at a time where white folks did not want to be labeled racists. And so it was kind of like we got, from affirmative action to everything else, there were, it was a climate in America that was kind of like supportive. Of course, you always have what you have.
The fringe.
It was the total opposite of what it is right now, what our kids have to face, sadly.
Yes.
It's kind of like,
what you also described, Mark, in terms of the relatives that live close by and the friends that you had that village there. And that's something, and I just had this conversation with someone the other day that seems to be missing these days, that village that, quite frankly, you talked about your mom, a single mom. It is no way you could get in trouble, Mark, with relatives next to you down the street, friends. And so I do see that village is missing in a lot of communities.
My goodness. And then, I think our kids are in their 20s now, and we did moved into the white neighborhood, better schools. And, as we look back at the experience, you're like, we see what's missing. Like you said, you don't have the friendships.
Yes.
You didn't have my daughters, to be 3 beautiful black girls and have nobody interested in you psychologically.
Yes.
What does that do?
That says something.
That's heartbreaking, right?
Yeah.
Also, just what I realize is with these kids, our kids at least had parents who not only told them the truth, but shaped the history and we basically, we gave them the other side. We gave them the truth. And I could see how if you don't have parents that give you the truth, you end up being confused and you're just lost in this world.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like, whew, man. So, you start second guessing, like, well, maybe we should have moved,
stay
over here,
That village is so important. And again, passing along history, and understanding our kids understood that our no was our no and our yes was our yes.
Yeah.
So, well, now you talked about school for a little bit, Mark. You had the love for radio, and you were always that call to guy to do the announcement. Did the teachers recognize something in you, Mark, that said, this guy stands out? And were there, again, teachers who pushed you and encouraged you?
Yeah, I had probably the ultimate, I had the support. I was charming, charismatic. Everybody liked me. I was voted most popular. Best personality, not most popular, best personality.
Okay.
But, I was a terrible student from a standpoint of I did not do the work. And I kind of I got over. I think that's, I think I got over. And I remember one teacher in 7th grade called me out. And she said, Mr. Johnson, I see you. One day it's going to catch up to you. And it's funny because it's almost like haunted me because she was right. I mean, I was the kind of person like in college, Robert, how could I get a C in broadcasting class when I'm working at a damn radio station? All I had to do was turn in the work. I was so not locked in from the school, oh, that's due today. Oh, that's due today. I was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm engaged. I'm the most talkative person in class, but I ain't read nothing. And I'm not like those people that, those geniuses. I didn't study and still got an A. No, I got a B. I had to go, Robert, I had to go before, I never forget in college, Dr. Sitaram. And in his class, you had 3 tests and he did not do quizzes and he did not have a book. So you had to go to his class because he's testing you on his lectures.
Yes.
So I had a D on my first test, a D on the second test. Oh, and there's only 3 tests. And I had a D on the third test. And you needed a C to graduate. So I go to him. I said, Dr. Sitaram, is there anything I can do? Because I got a D on all 3 tests. He said, I guess you will take the class again.
There's something to be said for consistency, though. You got 3 Ds. You know?
It was killing those Ds. And so I had to go, how they do, you go before, I went before, so basically the major, I did everything in the major. I mean, I worked at a radio station. I was a program director for the college station. I worked at a real radio station. I was the only brother that was on the TV news. I was the only brother that tried out for the TV news. So I did everything. So I had to go before the board and plead my case. And so, but they don't give you the decision until after graduation. So I walked, and I didn't tell my mom, of course. I walked and then had to wait in the summer for if they let that go or not. And they did. But I was looking at the mailbox every day like, doody-doo, da-da-da-da-da. My mom said, why you keep looking in the mailbox, huh? Ma'am?
Mark, I tell you, our stories are so similar. We'll have to catch up. So let's talk about this transition, Mark, because, again, many people remember you from the Big Fat Morning Show here in Baltimore. Take us back to those days, and what do you remember most about that era? Because the show was phenomenal. It had a huge following. There were even some mentions of the show on HBO's The Wire. I mean, it was groundbreaking here. So talk a little bit about that experience, how you got there, and what do you remember most about that era?
So a couple things. So, we talk about my history. So, I graduate and I go worked at a little station in Huntsville where I was a program director and the morning man. I basically at Huntsville, it almost was like an extension of college in that I was working at a real radio station, but I basically was doing me. You know what I mean? I was almost like, okay. And then Charleston was my first like competitive situation. So I get hired for Charleston. I go into this station. It was number 1 in Charleston, South Carolina. There were 2 other urban stations and 2 urban AM stations. So this super competitive market. And at first I struggled because, Robert, I had never had to read other people's words. Like in radio, they call them positioners. You say, triple the music Z93 to open up. For some reason, Robert, that first week, I was like, triple the music, I couldn't say. But I think what it was just that I just wasn't used to being, dancing to somebody else's beat. You know what I mean? It was like, I was kind of like, and then you throw on top of it, it's the number 1 station. And they had hired me to go up against the competition. And so, but it was great because, I eventually had success. And so that set up the station that I grew up listening to in St. Louis. I was going home. I met the program director at a conference and I asked him to be my mentor for this station in St. Louis. And then he called me. I was going home one day and I just said, hey, to Springfield. And I said, hey, can I stop by the station? I stopped by and that's when he asked me if I wanted to. And of course I said yes. I didn't even ask what the pay was, Robert. I was like, yes. And actually I had another offer from Greenville, South Carolina that I was supposed to go check out, a brand new station. I was like, nope. My girlfriend at the time, I moved her there. I was like, nope. I just took the job in St. Louis. And so St. Louis took me back. So here it is. This is that station I dreamed of working at. I got a chance to work at, right?
Yeah.
But at that station, I was the sidekick. I was the second person. So up to that point, I had been the main guy on the morning show. Now this put me in the second role. And what I learned about myself was I can do both. Some people can't. Some people are, like you can imagine a Steve Harvey ain't going to be no second banana.
Right.
A Tom Joyner probably is not going to be a second banana. I've realized I could do both and actually enjoyed doing both. So then I followed my wife. My wife's a news anchor from DC, and I met in St. Louis. And so when she got the job in DC, I was like, we were engaged. I said, I'll just go with you. So I came out here with no job. I followed my wife with no job and landed the biggest job of my career, right?
Wow.
And so that was in Baltimore. And Troy and I worked together in St. Louis, so I brought him with me. And then Marva was from Baltimore, but I think working in North Carolina. So that was the Big Fat Morning Show. And so when I arrived to Baltimore, we came with a whole bunch of me and Troy did those parody songs, and we had this great energy. So we were going to bring that same thing to our morning show. And Baltimore, I never experienced anything like Baltimore before. You can imagine the first time we went to Lexington Market in Baltimore with the Z93 van. And this is back when, everybody loved radio. So it was like, you see the van and everybody came out of the woodwork.
Yes.
So Lexington Market was the first time I saw, Baltimore.
Yeah.
The addicts and the energy. And it was heartbreaking, but at the same time, Baltimore has a spirit of the people. It's a people it's a people city, and it is charming. What I say about Baltimore is what it is. There's not a lot of fronting in Baltimore from the regular people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You get what you get. We're gonna party, we're gonna party. We're gonna get high, we're gonna get high. Whatever we say we're gonna do, we're gonna do. And when we started, we got embraced. I felt it, boom, came to town. And it just right off the rip, we had just a great connection. I think it was a special time in Baltimore too. It just felt like it was,
Yeah.
Drew Hill was exploding, Rough Ends was exploding. Ironically, Nelly, we had just left St. Louis, and Nelly was he wasn't even a star in St. Louis. He was a part of the St. Lunatics. But the first splash, the 92Q splash we went to, Nelly was there, so it was like kind of that connected that. Also, we had left. We started doing those parody songs in St. Louis. So we had left St. Louis. They had just won the Super Bowl. And then we came in 99 and won the Super Bowl in 2000. So it's kind of like we kind of had this kind of parallel thing. But yeah, man, Baltimore was a great thing, a great time for me. The most money I ever made. It was, me again leading the morning show. And so, yeah, it was special.
You mentioned Tom Joyner and Steve Harvey. Those guys know they have something. They have a gift. When did you realize, Marc, that I'm doing all of this work, but I do have something special? Was the Big Fat Morning Show that show that kind of let you know that I'm on to something here and I do bring some value to this?
I think to be honest, I think the Charleston experience was the moment, because initially, again, when they brought me in, I was supposed to be the new morning guy. But because I, couldn't say triple the music, they said, okay, you do nights and do mornings. You need to get comfortable. So in time, that move actually helped me, because in both time places, I found myself. You know what I mean? Like, so in the morning show, I was a part of the morning show with Stan Verrett, who went on to star at ESPN for Stan was there for like 15 years. He just left. But Stan and I did mornings together in Charleston, and then I did nights, by myself. And so I think it almost ended up being like that's when I came together, because I was killing it at nights and I was being funny on the morning show. And at that time I started doing parody songs. So the parody song thing was probably that thing. I was like, oh, I could do this, and I think I started that in Huntsville, actually. And then when I met Troy, it kind of like made it even more perfect. But yeah, those moments in Charleston, I think kind of like made me know that I got something. I remember when I met my boss there, he said, man, you like a young Tom Joyner. And so when he said that, Robert, I was like, oh snap. What, a young Tom Joyner? That was my idol. And so,
right.
Yeah, I think Charleston was when I probably felt it. Then I came to Baltimore, and yeah, there probably was a quiet confidence. I think, and when it comes to my life, I think, Robert, that's been the space where radio was the space where I think I definitely had that I got this spirit. I got this. But then, when you start seeing the success of others, you do ask yourself, like, why? I felt like I was going, radio changed, but I did feel like I could go all the way. I felt like there's no reason why I couldn't go all the way. Then it kind of like, it felt like the carpet got pulled from underneath, because they started to bring entertainers in the game. So as a radio guy, I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, I know. Because what it used to be, Robert, was before you get to the bigger markets, they used to say you had to have experience in the smaller markets.
In
So
the smaller markets.
when I got to Baltimore, and we've been a number one forever, I had now been at a major market for a time, and now what's next is New York or LA or whatever. And then that's when they started adding the comedians.
Yeah.
So the game changed. The game changed during my watch. You're like, damn it, man.
We'll talk a little later on about that journey piece. But Marc, the show was hugely successful, but eventually you were let go.
Yes.
Take me back to that day you learned that was happening, and what do you remember most about that moment?
Yeah, I think it wasn't shocking necessarily because they had changed the show. First they let Marva go, and then, they brought on Sanjay. Then they let Troy go, and they brought on Porkchop.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so, you're like, okay, this party's going to end eventually. And so that morning, I got the tapping on the glass on a Thursday. Hey, general manager, hey, after the show, let me talk to you. And I looked at them and said, oh, hey, about to blow me out, guys. And they were like, no, they're not. Then they were like, oh, maybe they are.
You felt that, Marc?
Yeah. The program, I know what happened was the program director. So when it was me and Troy, before they made the move, the engineer, well, I'm gonna say somebody gave me an email that the new program director had sent to the person over at Radio 1 and said he wanted to get rid of the Big Fat Morning Show. So I had this email in my possession.
Oh, jeez.
And I would ask him, I said, hey man, the streets are saying y'all trying to get rid of us. Now,
the streets, not the email.
I had the email, Robert. I had the damn email. And this guy lied to my face time and time again. So then they eventually got rid of Troy. When they got rid of Troy, here's the part. This what kills you, Robert. I have the email. I know what the plan was. And so when they let Troy go, they're trying to measure me.
Yeah.
And try to call my character into question. And I'm like, you lied to my face every day.
I got the email.
I got the email. And you let Troy go, and you trying to act like I'm the bad guy? What are we talking about here? So that's when they gave me they did give me a contract and said, sign it. You got 72 hours to sign the contract or you'll be fired.
Mm.
So, but again, I mean, look, Robert, I can't. The pay was great. That's a blessing. And that was a funny part about it, Robert. You know how you get so caught up. I went to people I trusted, a lawyer and a business owner, and both of them were like, sign a contract.
Yeah. Okay.
They're like, look, they could have just fired you. They could have just let you go. So take the money, sign the contract. So then that extended me another couple more years, with the new show. And then that's when that morning when he tapped on the glass and just said, and I think that was actually, that was a corporate decision really, because they were going to put the Ricky Smiley show on. And I think Miss Hughes was in Baltimore. Miss Hughes used to be in Baltimore, and I think they kind of left Baltimore alone because it was her baby. You know what I mean? They left it alone. Alfred left it alone. Then when they bought the stations in L.A. and she moved to L.A. or she left Baltimore. She wasn't there daily. I think that's when they probably looked at the books and were like, wait a minute now. Why is Marc Clarke making so much damn money?
Right.
Because I think they weren't paying attention, Then it's like, oh no, we're gonna syndicate. Because again, you think about that when you syndicate, you eliminate salaries. You only got to pay one guy.
Right.
You eliminate headaches. You ain't got to listen to them complain. So yeah, man.
Well, given that situation, Marc, was being, I guess, let go from the morning show, did you view that as something that happened, look in retrospect, something that happened to you, or when you look back at it now, was it something that happened for you? Did it make you start to think more about your worth and strategy? Talk a little bit about, those thoughts that were going through your mind when it happened. Now, I know you did get the contract, but at that point, when it happened, what was going through your mind in terms of happening to you or happening for you?
I think the bad part about it is it didn't. I think I was such a worker. you know how there's two different ways of thinking, entrepreneurial way of thinking, and then there's a worker bee kind of thinking. And I think I was such a worker bee thinker, like so many of us are,
Yes.
that I never realized, first of all, the power. You know, people say this all the time, Mark, you don't realize how, even now people say, you don't realize, Mark, how much power. And now I finally do. Like, I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday, because she's in the same situation. Our generation, at the end of the day, if you're not entrepreneurial, you're just not entrepreneurial. So you don't even know how to best put yourself in position to do things.
Yes.
The irony of it all, though, is in the position that my wife's in now and that I was in, and even still I am in a lot of ways. I basically I'm in position, you know, because I know the people. I just never asked the question. Yesterday I was with Donnie Glover, Be More News, and with my show, and we were in Annapolis, right? In Annapolis. So, you know, Senator Hayes, Senator McQuarrie, and different people that I've known since they were in college.
Yes.
I never said, "Hey, Governor, I'd love you. Can you support my nonprofit? Hey, Mayor, I want to do so and so and so and so in my business." Hey, still haven't. And so I think, Robert, sadly, when it happened, you said it happened to me or happened for me, and it would probably happen for me. Yes, but I still didn't activate. And I'm still figuring out how to activate. That. So it wasn't. So, you know, wake up call. Yeah, but it also, I think there's a couple things happen. Radio is not how radio was. Radio was transitioning, and as I watch it transition, I should have put myself in a position to, you know, put myself in a better place. But I'm not the only one. I look at Michael Baisden. When Michael Baisden's situation, Michael Baisden had millions of listeners.
Yes.
And on the radio, just to speak about how arrogant we are, because we don't know, on the radio, he was like, because he was in a contract negotiation, and he was like, "All right, y'all, listen on Monday, and I'll tell you what's gonna happen." And they let him go on Friday. They locked the doors, you know what I mean? They closed the doors. So he could not get into the building on Monday. Because again, you don't own nothing. So that's the same thing I did. You know, I think we don't, what we do have is this connection with our listeners. And so, you know, something as simple as, Robert, simple as having a list. All these years, Robert, imagine if I was thinking, and all these years starting in Huntsville, I had a list of all the people I did business with, all the people that follow me. All I could do is hit them on my phone and let them know what's going on all the time. And so that would be Huntsville, Charleston, South Carolina, St. Louis, Missouri, Baltimore, DC, New York, all those people. And I just stay in contact with them. Hey, I got a new book. Hey, I got a new class. Hey, I got a new this. Hey, I got a new mixtape.
Right. You know, and you know, you bring up such an important point that a lot of times we get so engrossed in being the talent that we really don't go behind the scenes on the business and production end of it. I remember, Mark, I went to the University of Miami for music, and initially I wanted to do music performance and engineering, but I sat through a music business class. And it was Dr. Alfred Reed. And I remember him explaining the business piece of music. And he says, he mentioned to the class, he said, "You all are wonderful musicians, but who's going to take care of you? Ask yourself that. Who's going to watch over your finances? Ask yourself that." He says, "I don't care how good you can play." He said, "You better know the business end of it." And that's when my eyes opened, because I said, "Oh, it is a business. You know, it is so entrepreneurial. It's the business piece of it that you don't know until later on, when you recognize, like, yeah, I'm the talent, but let me structure this. I need the business structure in the background." So I'm with you, you know, the email list that you could have developed from years ago. And then the other thing, Mark, is that a lot of times as the talent, we don't ask. We just assume somebody's going to do something for us, or they're going to book us for this gig or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
But we never ask. And what I learned over the years is the people who have been very successful, they recognize their talent and then they ask the question.
And you know what, Robert? I think we're probably similar in that the reason we don't ask is because we do know that irritating ass person that asks all the time. And we say to ourselves, I do not want to be like that person. But that person,
Exactly.
that person got a fat bank account.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to mention any names, but I know a famous person.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, in that room, when he's in that room, he's about to ask 50 or 100 people if they need a program. If you need me to come speak, if you need da-da-da-da, let me get the contact. And I remember I'm in the room cacking it up, having fun. Everybody, oh boy, I love talking to Marc Clarke. Yeah. And then at the end of it, I didn't ask, and all I have to, they'd be like, oh, I never knew you need. That's I talked to somebody and he said that. They said, we never thought that you and Allison, blah 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 blah. It's almost like because we both are the same. We're never gonna ask.
Yes.
We didn't think you'd be interested. We didn't know that. We thought you'd be too busy for that, huh? But so this is the discovery that's happened afterwards, and again, just being in Annapolis yesterday, Robert, I was like, wow. I had three opportunities. They were just conversations.
Yeah.
The only thing changed was I'm just more aware of it now. I saw a person from junior college. I said, I know you need a media program. She says, Marc Clarke, I do need a media program. Call me Monday.
Wow.
Hello? What? You know what I
Yes.
mean? How easy was that? And that's why people who aren't in our positions, they look at us like, I don't understand this guy. I don't understand this guy. Because if it was me, blah, 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 blah. And they're absolutely right. Because a lot of the people, you see it all the time. Some people with podcasts or with books or with this and that may not have a third of the information that we have, but they know how to grind. They know how to put their best foot forward. How many people, especially now, I majored in radio, television. I've been in media for a million years, blah, 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 blah. These other kids come in here and they never had but they got 1 billion followers though. And they're making money off their social media.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to post that. It's not good enough. Man, they be posting stuff. But I have to say, there is when you say, your brand, whatever, there's an expectation. If I do anything and it's not right, people will be like, well, Marc's fell off.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I also had to deal with my own level, and I don't know if this affects you, but it sounds like it may. This issue of perfectionism, where it's got to go out of the gate at a certain quality level. And a lot of times, Marc, I'll ruminate on that for a while, and then sometimes I miss the window.
Yeah, the window's gone.
Yeah, the window's gone. Like you said, you see some folks putting out stuff, and it wouldn't be my quality, but they're consistent. And what I found is that they perfect along the way. And we sit and try to, at least in my case, try to sit and say, okay, what's going to be perfect? And what I've come to know is it will never be perfect. And it's all about the journey and moving.
Well, all we got to do is look at Tyler Perry, right? I mean, Tyler Perry, people and how critical people are. And I've been guilty too. But it's like, he's like, I'm going to put this out here. I'm going to make this money. And in time, I'll get better.
Yes.
I'm not.
He started.
People, why doesn't he hire? The funny part is, you and I, because we kind of dabble in this, we know why sometimes he didn't hire people, because he didn't want to pay them.
Right.
Right. He's like, why is he writing, producing it? Yeah, because he's like, no, that's good. I'm good. Because if I can write it, produce it, and do everything and not have to pay somebody, and let's say it's a C-level production, but I still make money, who cares? Because when I did, Tyler Perry could say, because when I did for Colored Girls, all the woke black folks kept saying all his stuff is trash. So he did for Colored Girls, and it didn't move the needle at all. Right. Why? Because nobody wanted to see it. Okay, because there's two different conversations. Like you said, there's there's quality from a standpoint of the technical aspect, and then there's also what he's tapped into is formula, right? Formula.
Mm-hmm.
It's a formula that
Yes.
works, that gets you to, and that's what again, if you're not entrepreneurial, you don't understand.
Yeah.
It drives us crazy when your favorite restaurant closes in your favorite spot. But the formula is, I'm going to spend $4,500 a month for this building. When it moves to $5,500 or $6,500, I don't give a damn how successful I've been. I got to go move to a place that's $4,500 a month because that's my formula. Right.
Right.
And so it's the
Yeah,
same
I
thing.
follow
Tyler,
you.
I could get better writers, but now my budget's $20 million. I write it myself. It's $3 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the $3 million all day.
And it really gets back to finding not only a business formula, but you also have to find that formula for life.
For life.
What works for you? What works for your internal brand and spirit? So you nailed it right there. Now, I want to go back for a moment. When we talk about radio and how it's evolved over the years, there's a unique thing about the intimacy of radio and your voice being part of people's lives day in and day out. Was there ever a moment, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but a moment you realized just how powerful your voice could be in someone else's life? And this was in, I believe it's Charleston.
Robert trying to get me to cry like Oprah, and I cry easily. Now, yeah, man, I think I told the story about the young lady who was older, my age now, but older lady would call in on Saturdays, and then I get a call one Saturday, and she just says, I just called to say goodbye. And so I actually had been to her house before, so I went to her house and checked on her, and she in fact, as I was heading over there, I had the police follow me. We knocked on the door, we heard something and so they pushed the door in, and she had tried to commit suicide, and but yeah, but not just that, not that dramatic, but even just the people that you call in every day, on the Big Fat Morning Show. We were in the market for what, 9 years, 8 or 9 years, so we had people that grew up with us that called every day. We used to do the big fat shout outs, so people would call in the big fat shout outs, and even the listeners would know who they were, and so these people, you develop this relationship. One of the most stories I tell all the time, and I'm at the age where I tell stories over and over again, my poor daughters. But Big Fat Morning Show, me, Troy, and Marva, we were down at the harbor, and this brother, he worked in the kitchen, the restaurant. He came out. He said, "Man, we had broadcast from South Africa the two years in a row." And he came out and he said, "Man, I saved up my money, man. I'm taking my family to South Africa, man." And that right there, that was the moment that I was like, that's the whole goal right there.
Yeah.
And I actually saw him not too long ago, and it became a tradition where they went to South Africa as a family, and the kids went to South Africa, and they've kept the tradition alive, and they got to meet people. They have friends in South Africa, all because of our broadcast there.
Yeah.
And the thing about the part that was interesting when the Big Fat Morning Show, I think with me, Troy, and Marva, and me, Troy and Marva, me, Troy, and Sanjay, me, Pork Chop, and Sanjay, I think the thing we all shared was we weren't doing the show like, look at us, like we flossing, right? We did the show we wanted to show a snapshot of, like when we did South Africa, show how they're just like us. The kids wanted to rap, the people were funny and interesting. And I remember our general manager, he was hating. a lot of times people just don't get it. Like he thought you just want to have fun and you just don't, nobody really cares about that. And I was like, they care about it because of how we approach it, because they care about us, so they care about it. It'd be one thing, again, sadly, like a lot of these shows do now, is it's almost like like how people use Instagram. They show off. Look what I got. Look what I did. We never did it that way. Ours was talking to the community activists in South Africa, featuring artists in South Africa. You know what I mean? And so because of that, and because that was the spirit of the show, I think that's what would make a young man decide, I'm gonna take my family, because it made it interesting, and I think that was the thing that I loved about our show, and all the personalities were ever on the Big Fat Morning Show, including all the mixers, is that it was a spirit of kind of that, and and I think that's what, like you said, that's what makes radio, that's the intimacy of radio, and that's the power of radio when used that way versus, now it's weird. It's kind of like when you don't have the right, it's almost like when you don't have the right program director or you don't have the right leadership, then what the goal is becomes kind of unclear and what you're trying to do. And I think it's almost like, Robert, if you don't like people, that's what I know. If you don't like people, why would you want to be a manager of people? I don't get well, it seems like that seems happen. It seems like nowadays it's more and more. You have people who don't like people who are the boss of people. Or don't like people and they're in charge of putting out a product. Like if you don't have no friends, you don't know how people work. If I go out and cuss Robert out in front of everybody in the job, do you think people are gonna respect you? They're gonna look at you like, man, you better not do that to me. I'm gonna stab him when he does that to me. As opposed to treating people with fairness and kindness. It's weird.
Let me go back for just a moment. So, given all of that experience, you talked about impacting the gentleman that wound up taking his family to South Africa and it became part of his life. At this stage in your life, would you say you are more purpose-driven? You found your purpose in life, and any decision that you move forward with has to be or contain that purpose-driven element?
I think that's always been it. I think, like I said, I've been blessed to do. So I'm at a weird point in life in that the first part, I think most people, you work and work and work. And like you said, you finally get to that point at later in. I got to it at the jump. I've always been, that was my brand when I started. And I was blessed to have that runway all those years. And then what a blessing it was. And again, I made a lot of money and I got to do what I wanted to do every day. And I have an amazing family. I mean, what a blessing. But now at 59, to be trying to figure it out is interesting because everything changed. And I think there's something big on the horizon for me because I'm learning all this stuff that I didn't, like you say, the entrepreneur piece, the using the people that not using, but using the contact, using the context, asking, the good news is a lot of times when we reach this age, you burn out people because you always have asked them, hit them in the head. I ain't never hit you in the head. So if I call Robert and say, hey, Robert, whatever, you're listening because you're like, well, damn, Marc ain't never asked me for anything. So I think that's the part that I'm in. That's the space I'm in with this TV show. And even I'm starting to see because even with the way we approach, like with our TV show advertising and stuff, we basically, we'll put you on first and then we'll come back and say, hey, because I think that's something else that I saw over the years, like, especially with Black radio, like, wouldn't it have been powerful if you put that small store owner on first and and then you say, okay, what can you afford? You know what I mean? Versus like, it's $1 billion, and you get one commercial and if it don't work, too bad. Because you realize businesses need people, right?
That's right. You talk about, you've made this transition, entrepreneur, understanding the business aspect of it, and you're still bringing good quality content to the marketplace. Talk to me about that transition to creating the Good News Show. And when I see you talk about it, your face just lights up. What went on behind putting that together?
Well, when you talk about media, these company owners, that's why it's all negative, because they feel like negative sells. If you look at every post on social media, if you look at television, and it obviously does because you look at the ratings and it does well, which is it's the antithesis of who I am now with my own show. Highlighting the positive stuff is what, back to what you said originally about the brand or making sure that it's in line with who you are.
As we begin to wrap up, I want to talk about when we met at the Father's Day walk, we had a chance to talk. That event is about health and wellness, mental, spiritual, and psychological. Talk a little bit about where you are in life in terms of particularly the mental health and the physical health aspect of life, because you also wrote a book, 60 Days to the Real Me. And so I want to talk a little bit about what went into that decision to write the book and where are you now?
Well, so I was diagnosed with MS, and I think in 2023, and so that was interesting. I didn't see that coming. And the book came before that. The book, I was on my juicing. I've been up and down. I'm like Luther, big Luther, little Luther. I've been up and I've been down. I've been on I've been on a fitness journey forever. And the irony is, I am definitely a gym rat. So at 372 pounds, I was a gym rat, a big gym rat.
Wow.
And then now at 250 pounds, I'm a gym rat. And I mean, I did the weight loss surgery, but I did that. So before that, though, I wrote that book and I did a 60-day juice fast and I lost like 70 pounds.
70?
Yeah. And then,
wow.
And then of course, gained it back. But that was where I was there. And then, but yeah, diagnosed with MS. I was diagnosed, I had the flare up, and that's how I got diagnosed. I know you're a cancer survivor. The thing about the health stuff, I think it just kind of makes you just appreciate every day.
Yes.
And I think it kind of, MS is kind of, I call it like the monster, very similar to cancer in that, it may flare up or not. You may wake up one morning, you can't walk and walk again the next day or not. And so I think it just makes me just every day I wake up, just really appreciate it, really appreciate it. I find out when I'm at the gym, sometimes I find myself, like yesterday when I was at the gym, just testing myself, my strength, just to be like, okay, still got it. And also that 59 kicks in too, Robert, that 59. But I will, let me say this, let me brag on myself because my phone was broken, but I was on the flat bench. I threw up them hundreds. Hundreds. I was like, but it doesn't exist because my phone was broke. So
wow.
But,
well,
yeah.
You have handled that well, and I appreciate your willingness to share that information. And of course, wishing you all the best with that, and thank you for encouraging other folks to really be mindful of their health journey, because you talked about that at the event we were at last year. Now, I do have to ask you, Marc, as we wind down, if you had to look back over your journey, your life journey, what lessons have shaped you most as a man and as a professional?
I think the lessons that have shaped me as a man, first of all, you got to marry the right woman. And I married the absolute right woman. Because I told you I dreamed her. I dreamed her.
You mentioned that.
Being married to the right woman has made my life exceptional,
Okay.
And so I think men and women, you have to, when you're dating and even your friends, you have to put people around you that are what you want in your life. If people have characteristics that you don't want in your life, why in the hell would you bring them into your life, in your circle? They're not in my circle, man. If you ain't, you got to be worthy to be in the circle.
Yes.
I think because as an only child, I enjoy life and I love life and I love myself. So therefore, I'm not attracting you into my life if you're a bummer, if you're bringing it down, if you're whatever. So that's, that. And then professionally, at the end of the day, I think I just, like you say, make sure you take advantage of your opportunities. If you have a platform like I had for years, make sure you cultivate your contact list, make sure you stay in contact and build relationships.
Yes.
And then make sure you, ask. If there's something you want, go for it. Ask for it.
That's a perfect segue to this last question, because I think you've answered most of it. But if you had to go back and whisper in the ear of the 24-year-old Marc Clarke, what advice would you give him?
Save your money. Save your health. Don't gain weight. See, you look up, you gain, 10 pounds a year, 5 pounds a year. You look up, you're 100 pounds heavier. Versus if you stay, savings and health are similar in that if you are disciplined in both, you'll have success and you'll have a long life.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Marc Clarke, for joining me today. And I know folks will probably want to get in contact with you. They may have questions. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you, Marc?
Best way is probably Instagram or online is at The Marc Clarke Show, MarcClarke, at The Marc Clarke Show. That's probably the best way.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure those notes are in the show notes and your contact information. So again, Marc, thank you so much for joining me. I wish you nothing but good health, and thank you again for being here.
Robert, thanks for having me, brother. Take care.
All right. Take care.
All right.